Amazing discovery. CEO exposes janitor's hidden heart, donates 50% of pay to inspire orphans. Nathan stared at the flickering screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The looming deadline for the presentation weighed down on him like a leaden shroud. Every inch of the bustling office felt alien. The corporate world he aimed to conquer now shimmered with a gnawing distrust. He was a 34-year-old CEO, a title that should have given him power, yet instead, it made him feel small, disillusioned. The long hours he spent in college coding and innovating seemed replaced by endless meetings and shallow conversations, drowning his passion. As he vacuums his work area late that stormy evening, he failed to notice Joe, the janitor, moving steadily through the space. Nathan found comfort in the monotony of his tasks, but soon felt an unusual pull towards the break room. The glow of a light flickered ominously through the glass door, beckoning him closer. His heart raced with a mix of curiosity and nervousness. What lay behind that door? What mundane remnants of corporate life had been left behind to rot? Pushing the door ajar, Nathan stumbled upon an unexpected scene: Joe, surrounded by crinkled letters, illuminating an intimate collection of gratitude notes from a group of orphans. He felt like a voyeur in an emotional sanctum. Each letter bore heartfelt pleas for love and support, revealing Joe's silent dedication. He donated 50% of his paycheck to the children's shelter. Nathan's heart plummeted as dread seeped through him. What was he really doing with his life? The next morning, guilt gnawed at Nathan's insides like a hungry beast. How had he gotten here, basking in his inflated salary while Joe poured his very essence into uplifting the forgotten? Each word echoing in the back of his mind cemented the paradox of his corporate existence. When he stood before the team during the all-hands meeting, he hesitated, steeling himself to recognize Joe's humility amidst their superficial ambitions. As the words left his lips, the air turned cold. Co-workers recoiled, sneers simmering in their expressions. "He's just the janitor," someone hissed, and an avalanche of dissent descended. With every growing murmur, clenching doubt twisted in Nathan's gut. How could he challenge the very ethos of his position? Advocating for Joe seemed not just implausible, but reckless. What did that say about him, about their perception of merit? He felt carved into a chasm, weaponized by the importance of his title while fearing the repercussions of embracing the virtues he wished to champion. Nathan's thoughts became chaotic, pulse quickened, muscles tensed. Would defending Joe weaken him among his peers? The oppressive pressure for recognition, achievement, ambition weighed heavily upon him as thunder echoed ominously outside. A deeper, turbulent question rattled inside him: was ambition worth more than integrity? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every second ticked louder in his mind as he found himself in a silent confrontation with Joe the next day. Joe's unwavering spirit radiated quiet strength, fully embodying selflessness. He wasn't seeking accolades, he merely wanted to help. What right did Nathan have to advocate for him? The tension swelled, risking fury from his colleagues while he grappled with the weight of his privileges. Nathan felt the anguish grip him like a vice. The corporate shadows grew darker, tightening around him as he stood on the precipice of a critical decision, teetering on the edge between succumbing to expectation or challenging the entire narrative. The internal storm raged on, leaves fluttered feverishly against the window, mirroring the disarray of his thoughts. The world outside seemed to call: would he reach out and grasp the hidden giant, or let the tides of corporate constraints drown him? Nathan's mind spun at the thought of his next steps, his heart carrying the weight of newly ignited resolve. He had always prided himself on being pragmatic, but the encounter with Joe had unearthed a latent yearning for purpose. The frantic pulse of the corporate world seemed to beat in conflict with a deep-seated need for authenticity. He stared at the letters strewn across Joe's workspace, a flurry of emotions swirling as he traced the delicate ink with his fingertips. In a world dominated by profit margins and quarterly reports, he had forgotten the essential narrative, the stories behind each employee, each decision, each dollar. His thoughts raced. If he were to prioritize meaningful connections over climbing the corporate ladder, where would that leave him? Would he be a pariah among his peers, or could he unearth a path that merged the two worlds? That evening, as he walked the fluorescent-lit halls of the office, he decided to confront the unsettling aura in which he found himself tangled. A firm voice echoed in his mind, the same one that had quieted fears during tumultuous coding days in college. You can be the change. With each step, emerging defiance surged within him. He'd speak to his board about reassessing their corporate values not just as a token gesture but as a genuine recalibration of their mission. Nathan spent sleepless nights drafting proposals. He researched companies that had embraced corporate social responsibility as a core element of their business model. Slowly, he constructed a presentation that interwove fiscal responsibility and purpose-driven initiatives, one that would amplify the ethos embodied by Joe. But the fear loomed large: his peers would likely resist any deviation from the deeply entrenched traditions that heralded profitability above all. The day of the board meeting arrived, and as he took his seat at the glossy table, doubt drummed like a war cry in his chest. But as his colleagues' smug smiles greeted him, a quiet determination swirled within. He recognized the familiar faces. The entrepreneurship brought them together, yet it felt like an omen looming over him, urging him toward complacency. Swallowing hard, he forced himself to breathe as he began. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about our priorities. We've built a successful company, yes, but at what cost? What if we started linking our accomplishments with the values we say we believe in? What if we committed to a more meaningful form of success? A mumbled chorus of dissent rippled through the room, cautioning his audacity. Nathan, focus on the bottom line. We're not a charity, echoed one voice. The fiery response flared within him, igniting a resolve that dared to drown out the cacophony of opposition. He pressed on, recounting Joe's story, the letters, the heart, the sacrifice. His colleagues shifted uneasily, their dismissive attitudes beginning to falter as curiosity piqued. The collective faces morphed from irritation to intrigue, igniting something electric in the air. As he concluded, the murmurs grew louder. Would they consider his proposal? Or had he overstepped? The atmosphere hung thick with uncertainty, but Nathan felt a crack in the corporate facade, a fracture of possibility. A reluctant acknowledgement took root among them. But as Chairman Gregg's gaze pierced him with scrutiny, Nathan felt the true test approach. Are you saying we should sacrifice profit for idealism? Gregg's tone was sharp, unwavering. Eyes locked, and Nathan felt his heartbeat racing. The weight of expectation pressed down on him, each breath thick with tension. Nathan inhaled deeply, poised to either risk everything or retreat into the shadows of mediocrity. It was now or never. But before he answered, he couldn't shake the foreboding thought: could this moment be the key to his liberation, or would it seal his fate among the ranks of the disillusioned? The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of a wall clock, the only heartbeat in the otherwise sterile atmosphere. Nathan's mind raced, the implications of Gregg's question echoing with a piercing urgency. He was at the precipice, teetering between personal integrity and professional survival. The air felt charged as he formulated his response, fingers clasped tightly around the edge of the presentation laptop. Not sacrifice, Gregg, Nathan heard himself state, an unexpected calmness settling his nerves. I'm proposing a strategy that recognizes that profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive. We evolve by aligning our goals with human values, not abandoning our bottom line. He could see the tension easing ever so slightly among some board members, skepticism momentarily replaced by curiosity. Gregg's brow furrowed, yet Nathan seized that fleeting opportunity, building on it. Consider this: employees perform better when they feel connected to their work. They contribute more creatively when they recognize their impact extends beyond spreadsheets. Companies that adopt these values see enhanced loyalty and higher returns in the long term. A murmur rolled through the room. Perhaps only noticing the metrics, Nathan could feel the weight of a paradigm shift beginning to form. He had captivated their attention, if only for a moment. Yet, he was acutely aware that he treads upon a treacherous path. The glittering facade of the corporate world was enticing yet brittle, and he needed to cut through the noise with something profound. Think of Joe, he pressed on, driven by an intrinsic fire. He devoted himself to the well-being of others. Every letter he wrote transformed lives. Imagine if we harnessed that spirit? What if we launched a new initiative not just to enhance our profitability but to weave social responsibility into the fabric of our organization? He could see Greg's disdain struggling against the tide of Nathan's words. But what about risk, Nathan? The chairman's voice snapped, as if to fragment the fragile hope he had just ignited. This isn't a charity, it's business. Do you understand the ramifications of what you're asking? On the contrary, I do, Nathan countered, heart pounding with determination. I implore you to look at the long game. What's at stake here is not simply a departure from tradition, it's a chance to redefine success. Imagine the branding, the market differentiation. Young talent will flock to a purpose-driven organization, and they want to be the only ones we attract clients and partners aligned with our values. He felt the room shift beneath him, the subtle movements of colleagues glancing at one another, the tiniest hint of something that resembled vulnerability. Could it be hope? Or were they simply grappling with the weight of the unfamiliar? Nathan suppressed the urge to falter, riding his momentum, and pressed forth. I'm not asking for permission to abandon profit. I'm advocating for a strategy where profit is derived from deeper connections with our employees and community. Let us make every dollar count, not just for us, but for those we serve. Silence engulfed the room once more, and Nathan became acutely aware of his own heartbeat thudding in his ears. It felt surreal. He had traversed the tumultuous waves of self-doubt, and now stood at the helm, navigating uncharted waters with conviction. As he scanned the board members' expressions, he sensed a divide forming. Perhaps you're forgetting, Nathan, Greg spoke slowly, weighing every word, that not all change results in progress. You could ruin everything we've built. Each point struck like a lingering sting, but Nathan embraced his fear. It fueled him. The fight wasn't yet over, and as he prepared to respond, a new realization dawned upon him. This wasn't solely about Joe's legacy or idealistic notions, it was about him standing firm in his own power. Before he could voice his counter-argument, Greg's phone buzzed menacingly, pulling him momentarily from the tension-filled confrontation, and in that split second, Nathan could almost taste the fragility of hope. Would the words he had so passionately spoken resonate authentically with the board? Would he find his footing in a world jeopardized by conformity and greed? With every heartbeat, the stakes escalated higher. The room remained frozen in anticipation. Nathan leaned forward, ready to seize the moment, and the greatest challenge of all awaited him, navigating the realm where personal conviction met corporate ambition. But what danger lay ahead in that precarious balance? Nathan's heart raced, its tempo sinking with the ominous ticking of the clock. Greg was still fidgeting with his phone, the screen illuminating his narrowing eyes. What revelation could emerge now? Nathan wondered. Another jab at his integrity, or perhaps a newsworthy distraction in the spirit of maintaining the status quo. As he scanned the room, he noticed a few board members beginning to shift in their seats. Despite the stillness, their expressions reflected an internal battle, an urge to embrace change, battling against the fear of its implications. Nathan took a slow breath, grounding himself in the moment, reminding himself that whatever he faced, he had already ignited curiosity. Greg, Nathan ventured cautiously, I understand that change can be daunting. But what's scarier is stagnation. Companies don't thrive on comfort, they thrive on innovation. He leaned forward, locking eyes with a few members. Imagine being at the forefront of this movement. Imagine leading not just in profits, but in purpose. Greg's expression twisted in annoyance. And what do you propose? A marketing gimmick dressed in altruism? I want to stand by while we prioritize social narratives over financial soundness. The tension thickened, each word sending ripples of unease through the room. Nathan felt the sting of fear lurk in his stomach, daring him to withdraw and protect himself. He could retreat into conventional wisdom, the safety of numbers that placated the board for years, or he could push harder. No, Greg, Nathan replied, his voice steady but urgent. This isn't a gimmick. It's about authenticity. If we cast aside empathy and understanding, we risk losing our most valuable asset, our people. He paused, watching the individual faces, some slowly softening, others rigid as iron. Let us stand on the right side of the narrative. By integrating social responsibility into our strategy, we build trust. We build a sustainable future, one where people willingly give their all for an organization that values them. Something in his conviction shifted the atmosphere once more, even if just slightly. Voices had quieted, brows furrowed in contemplation. Nathan noticed Helen, a long-serving accountant, whose sharpness had always been respected yet oftentimes feared. She seemed to be weighing something deeper amidst the debate, her fingers dancing nervously against each other. "This is bold, Nathan," Helen finally spoke, her voice breaking the silence. "But how do you intend to balance this with our shareholders' expectations? They won't necessarily cheer for empathy." The murmurs echoed through the boardroom like a chorus, a challenge, yes, but encouragement as well. "What if we established a clear metrics task force?" Nathan proposed, energized by an emerging sense of direction. "Let us craft actionable steps that define how social responsibility aligns with our profit margins. Our goal would be to show that doing good doesn't come at the expense of revenue. We can maintain transparency with shareholders while cultivating a stronger employee base who are proud to work for us." As he spoke, Nathan's confidence grew. He was enveloped in a sense of purpose, armed not just with theories but with a plan that bridged societal context and fiscal responsibility. He imagined the future, products that not only functioned well but shaped lives, initiatives that inspired community well-being while resonating with company values. Greg interrupted, his skepticism resurfacing. "You're romanticizing the future, Nathan. How will we deal with the immediate backlash? Fear can't be ignored." "Exactly," Nathan replied, unable to suppress a smile at the challenge. "Fear can't be ignored, but it can be transformed. Consider a beta program for our employees, introducing personal investment in local charities through company matches. They'll navigate discomfort alongside us. In unity, we mitigate backlash." The room felt electric. He was catalyzing a conversation, pushing boundaries and forcing reckoning. Nathan could see sparks of recognition starting to flicker among his colleagues. But the lurking shadows of doubt were undeniable. Greg stood abruptly, arms crossed, exuding defiance. "You might cross a line. Somewhere along the way, you lose the very foundation we've built. Your aspirations, while noble, might sink us into chaos." Nathan stood taller, heart swelling as he faced Greg's challenge. This was not just a discussion, it was a fierce battle for the organization's future, a personal crusade he felt compelled to fight. The fight wasn't only for his vision, but for all those like Joe who believed in doing more. "Let me show you," Nathan stated, a new resolve burning in his chest. "Trust me, trust in exploring this path. If anything, I will either be the architect of our downfall or the lighthouse guiding us through." The boardroom hung suspended in uncertainty, and Nathan, amid swirling doubts and flickering hope, felt himself metamorphosing. This wasn't just about winning an argument, this was about claiming his identity in the corporate landscape, about illuminating the hidden heart of the organization. As Nathan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the next round of queries, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was no longer alone. Every heart in the room beat synchronously with him, not just to resist change, but to reset their expectations. And as the conversation continued to build, he knew the real challenge lay ahead. Could he sustain this momentum, or would Greg and other skeptics remain a constant barrier to his newfound purpose? What would it ultimately cost him to birth this vision into reality? The room's atmosphere crackled around Nathan as discussions swirled and merged into a whirlpool of ideas and doubts. Each voice that joined the conversation shifted the dynamics, and there he stood, a central figure holding onto a flame of conviction. As the debate intensified, he became acutely aware of Helen's stare fixed intently on him, her brow creased with concern and a hint of intrigue. It struck him that this was not just a board meeting, it was a reflection of his emerging leadership. Every word spoken was a brick being laid in the foundation of the change he envisioned. Yet, it also revealed fractures, pockets of resistance that threatened to collapse the structure. "I can already sense your fear, Greg," Nathan said, injecting confidence into his voice. "But this isn't just about us, it's about the future of our company. I believe our very survival depends on our capacity to adapt to a new narrative, one that not only drives profits but enriches lives." A palpable silence followed his assertion, the collective breath of his colleagues hanging in the air. Something inside him stirred, an instinct urging him to lean in further. Faced with Greg's scrutiny and the weight of everyone's expectations, Nathan understood this moment could either solidify his influence or break it into pieces. What if we launched a pilot initiative in a small department? Nathan proposed, gathering steam. A straightforward case study where employees could benefit directly from our new strategy. Over time, we'll gather data not only to justify the approach financially but to cultivate proof of its effectiveness on our internal culture. Real metrics, tangible success. Greg's eyes narrowed, skepticism still evident. And if it fails? You could end up setting the company back years. The risk is worthwhile, Nathan responded quickly, meeting Greg's challenge with stark determination. The fear of failure will only smother what is possible. I'm not asking for blind faith, I'm asking for an opportunity to demonstrate that embracing change can indeed yield incredible returns. As he unleashed the line of thinking, Nathan felt an adrenaline rush, his mind racing with possibilities. He envisioned a company that not only adapted but led by example. Helmed by a vision rooted in empathy, collaboration, and a commitment to community, they could differentiate themselves in a saturated market rising like a phoenix through shared purpose. He paused again, looking around at the faces in the room, searching for allies. To his surprise, he noticed that several members who had previously seemed resistant were now listening intently, engaged. Imagine if our employees felt ownership towards something greater than profits. If they see our company connecting with their values, wouldn't they invest more of themselves? A voice broke through, soft yet firm. It was Helen. You're drawing an interesting picture, Nathan. But I still struggle with the idea of accountability. How do we quantitatively track this shift while managing true corporate governance? He appreciated her candor. Her objections were not only valid, but also restless echoes of what many in the room were likely feeling. Metrics will be our allies, Helen. And we will craft them together. Transparency will build trust. I promise to take your guidance as we form this task force. I need you, all of you, because this isn't a solo mission. His appeal radiated sincerity, and Nathan felt anew the stirring he had sensed before, an underscored belief that vulnerabilities could be strengths when one harnessed them correctly. He was drawing lines of connection, fostering a conversation that moved beyond mere opposition toward collective creativity. But just as he began to feel the edges of solidarity, Greg interrupted again, his voice cold like steel. Do you truly believe you can guide us through the chaos you might create? What will you sacrifice for your vision? Can this portion of your dream justify the potential backlash against us? Nathan felt the heat of Greg's challenge, a direct confrontation he had anticipated. A counterpoint. What will your lack of action cost us in the long term? It's worth asking, who do we want to be in this world? The company that clings to outdated models out of fear? Or the one that adapts, leading with heart in the pursuit of excellence? A contemplative murmur rippled through the boardroom, planting seeds of doubt, but also curiosity. The fire within Nathan sparked and roared. As the moment prolonged, and eyes shifted nervously amongst each other, Nathan resolved to remain standing on the precipice between uncertainty and potential discovery. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and in walked Joe, the janitor. His presence, an unexpected intrusion, had the power to illuminate the human cost of their discussions. Nathan's heart quickened again, sensing this was more than a coincidence. He needed to weave this new dynamic into the conversation. This could be the turning point, the actual embodiment of his vision standing there. As Joe approached, the question formed in Nathan's mind, should he reveal the connection he had with him, even in this charged atmosphere? What voices would he echo by sharing the story that had crafted his resolve? Nathan's heart pounded as he prepared to bridge the divide, knowing everything hung in the balance. For now, the next chapter loomed uncertain. Would the presence of an ordinary man tip the scales toward change or intensify the conflict? Nathan inhaled sharply, locking eyes with Joe, who stood near the entrance looking apprehensive yet resolute. The boardroom, once a battleground of ideas, transformed into a stage that held the weight of his past decisions and future aspirations. He sensed Joe was not just there to tidy up, he was an embodiment of the very principles Nathan had been advocating: integrity, dedication, and a profound connection to purpose. "Joe," Nathan began, his heart racing. The room fell silent, all attention gravitating toward the unlikely presence. "As we discuss the fate of our company, I can't help but think of the people behind our mission. This is Joe, our janitor, who represents the heart of our operations. Joe, would you share a few words?" A mix of surprise and concern rippled through the room. He felt the air tense as Joe stepped forward, clearing his throat, his hands slightly trembling. Nathan could almost hear the echoes of doubt around the table, the fear that opening such a personal discourse would unravel their hard-earned professionalism. Joe hesitated, his eyes darting to Nathan, silently seeking reassurance. I don't usually speak in front of groups like this," he started softly, glancing around the boardroom. "But I've been with this company for over a decade. I see what happens here every day and how people treat each other." Nathan could feel Helen's gaze shift from him to Joe, an unspoken curiosity brewing. This could either build bridges or erode them altogether. He leaned in, listening intently. "I know for some, my position may seem small. But I believe what we do has an impact. Every time I clean up here, I think about the families I support, the kids who count on me. I sacrifice a portion of my pay to help fund after-school programs for children in my neighborhood. It isn't much, but it's something," Joe shared, his voice steadying with newfound resolve. Doubtful faces flickered with surprise. Nathan observed as Greg's brows knitted tighter, but a spark of realization began to illuminate the air thick with skepticism. "Our work," Joe continued, "is not just about profit margins. It's about creating better lives enriched by our dedication. If we focus on people, our success will follow." Nathan felt a fire ignite within, a meld of admiration and purpose. "You see that connection between personal effort and company value? We can create a corporate culture that mirrors this ethos, that prioritizes humanity." Suddenly, the boardroom felt different. The atmosphere grew electric with the distinct realization that real value was not merely financial, but deeply human. Greg's expression faltered, the edges of his staunch resistance beginning to soften. "Are you suggesting we redefine our metrics to include community impact?" he asked, slowly, as if testing the weight of the words. "Yes," Nathan responded, eager to seize the momentum. "That's exactly it. Metrics should reflect the essence of our mission. Our workers, our consumers, our local community, everyone can be part of this story, together." His voice was impassioned, each word a keystone in the emerging vision. But beneath the surface, Nathan wrestled with the overwhelming fear that this idea could spiral out of control. The vulnerability of exposing personal stories amidst corporate ambitions gnawed at him. What if they couldn't execute such lofty ideals? What if they failed? "Joe, I want to ensure your voice and others like yours are included in this transformation. Will you join us in creating this new narrative?" Nathan asked, his gaze earnest, filled with hope and determination. Joe's face illuminated with genuine surprise, sensing the weight his presence now carried. "I'd be honored, Nathan. But you need to remember it's about more than just words. People need to feel what they hear. They need to see the change." Nathan nodded, the truth in Joe's statement resonating deeply. His internal conflict began to crystallize. They needed actionable steps, not just lofty ideals. As he opened the floor for discussion, a fervor began to ripple through the room. He could see members shifting, new ideas blossoming, doubts weighing less heavily. He was striving to bridge the gap, drawing on the strength of experiences like Joe's to sow loyalty and passion back into the workforce. Just then, Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting the evolving conversation. He didn't want to lose the moment, yet the screen flashed an urgent notification from his mentor. He resisted the urge to check it, focused instead on the shift within the boardroom. "Now, let us talk about how we implement this, shall we? Because the path ahead won't be easy, but it will be worth it." But as Nathan infused the room with his fervor, something nagged at him. The impatience lingering from the text loomed over him, a bizarre contrast to the unity unfolding. He wondered what news awaited him. Would the expansion of his vision result in collaboration and harmony or explode into conflict and chaos? The tension between these worlds held Nathan captive, edging him toward an unknown future. And as he braced for the next steps, he couldn't shake the feeling that his greatest test still lay ahead, one that would confront not only his professional ambitions but the very essence of who he was becoming. Nathan's heart thrummed rhythmically, the culmination of years of ambition now leading him into uncharted waters. As voices began to fill the boardroom, a palpable energy coursed through the space. He sensed a shift, a collective engagement that had eluded them for too long was awakening now. He looked at Joe, standing somewhat awkwardly against the wall yet radiating a quiet strength. Nathan was both relieved and invigorated by this moment, feeling an immense encouragement from Joe's courageous act of sharing. But the hum in the room these days was fraught with uncertainty about where to steer the newfound momentum. Nathan took a deep breath, mentally reformatting his vision, yet still battling the ghost of that message buzzing in his pocket. His mentor had never shied away from challenging him, and he anticipated a stern reminder about practicalities amidst his grand ideals. But this was also about confronting his fears, the doubts bubbling to the surface about whether those ideals could take root in such a structured corporate environment. "Let us break this down into actionable steps," Nathan proposed, his voice ringing strongly across the table. "How do we create an inclusive environment that honors every voice, including Joe's?" The question hung in the air, making him acutely aware of the audience before him, their potential support and equally, their skepticism. Helen, who had held her reservations throughout the earlier discussions, leaned forward, her expression contemplative. "What would this look like, Nathan? What initiatives can we implement practically? It's all good to talk about principles, but we need a solid framework to move forward." That was the heart of it, wasn't it? Nathan recognized that he had still been dancing on the surface of this conversation. He needed specifics. "Perhaps we can begin by looking at how different departments currently function. We could involve employees at all levels in defining our new mission statement, conducting workshops that prioritize not just profitability, but the human aspect of our operations." He looked at Joe, catching a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "What do you think about hosting community outreach projects? Employees could spend a few hours a month helping at local schools or shelters, reflecting our values directly into actions." There was a moment of silence as the idea hung in the balance between ambition and practicality. Nathan could feel the weight of his ideals clashing against the rigid walls of reality, yet this was the leap he had to make. "Hear me out," Nathan pressed, readying himself for a pushback. "If we frame our community involvement in terms of metrics, how it enhances employee satisfaction and even customer loyalty, then it becomes a dual investment." He noticed Greg tapping his fingers on the table, a habit Nathan had learned was a telltale sign of agitation. "I'm not opposed to community involvement," Greg interjected, the frustration bubbling to the surface, "but we can't afford to lose focus on our primary objectives. We might end up digging a hole we can't climb out of." Nathan felt his pulse quicken as he prepared for the confrontation he had been anticipating. "What if I told you our primary objective should be to redefine what we consider our success? Profit isn't sustainable if we're not engaging with our people and our community meaningfully. Isn't that what we all want in the end?" Greg's expression hardened as he squared his jaw. "And if we find ourselves diverting resources without seeing a return? You can't ignore the risks." Each point made Nathan's resolve firmer but did not rid him of the anxiety gnawing at his insides. He sensed that pushing forward on these ideals might mean risking his position, but he also felt a calling to lead in the face of adversity. With a quiet but confident tone, Nathan responded, "Every great change comes with calculated risks. If we aim for growth that inspires rather than merely profits, then we must be willing to embrace that leap of faith." Yet still, beneath his brave facade, his mind spiraled into a whirlwind of uncertainty. The notification in his pocket continued to hum like an impending storm, and he could hardly ignore it any longer. He would have to face whatever was waiting for him outside. How far he was prepared to go in this personal evolution remained to be seen. As the tensions within the boardroom thickened, Nathan realized something crucial. The work ahead would challenge not only the company's boundaries but would probe into the deepest corners of his identity. Would he remain steadfast against the encroaching resistance? What sacrifices would he need to make for the sake of his vision, and would change will be worth confronting for? Gritting his teeth against the rising uncertainty, Nathan felt the turning point loom ever closer. The true challenge awaited him not only in the boardroom but within himself, and he was beginning to sense it would demand more than he could give. In that moment, as voices began to exchange ideas, Nathan made a pivotal decision. He would pull out his phone and finally confront whatever daunting news awaited him. With a glance at the screen, he braced himself for impact, knowing that the next revelation could dramatically reshape everything he was courageously attempting to build. The screen illuminated Nathan's face, revealing a message that seized his gut with icy fingers. It wasn't just a notification, it was a challenge, a troubling email from his mentor that resonated deeply with the discussions he'd just encountered. He felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him like an anvil. It wasn't just about the company anymore, it was about him, his vision, and the trail he intended to blaze. He read through the email, each word igniting a cascade of thoughts. His mentor argued against the broadened mission statement, claiming it was too ambitious, too idealistic for a firm that needed to tighten its belt in a shifting economy. Nathan struggled to catch his breath. The allure of a new vision clashed sharply with the tangible fears laid out in that succinct and calculated communication. As he put the phone down, his heart still raced, and self-doubt settled like a fog over his mind. Was he the right person for this? Had he overstepped? Each moment in the boardroom felt heavier now, layered with the reality that the support he imagined could easily wane under scrutiny. "Are you with me here?" he asked the room, forcing the question out even as uncertainty pooled in his stomach. "I need to hear your thoughts, your real thoughts." The collective gaze intensified as everyone weighed their opinions. The ebb and flow of silence felt like a tidal wave beneath their hesitation. It was Helen who broke through, her tone more compassionate than he had anticipated. "Nathan, it's clear you're passionate about this, but you also need to understand the stakes. We're risking a lot more than just resources." "Risk is part of any game worth playing," Nathan countered, the steel creeping into his voice. "But if we don't take a chance now to evolve, aren't we risking our very relevance?" Another beat of silence passed. Would he be able to sway them? He sensed the pendulum swinging, not just of their approval, but of his own confidence, and he felt a swell of determination. This was no longer just about him or the board's directive, this was about carving a path towards something that spoke to the core of why he joined this company in the first place. Driven by urgency, Nathan gestured to a nearby whiteboard, hoping to channel this brewing energy into something actionable. "Let us consider a trial run. Small-scale initiatives within our departments. Let's test the waters, some community workshops, a staff-driven focus group to guide our community involvement." As he sketched out ideas, Nathan realized the abstraction was taking shape, shifting from ideation to practical solutions. He proposed the first step, a brainstorming session where employees could share personal stories of social impact, connecting those individual narratives to the company's overall ethos. "This will engage our people and allow them a platform to voice their experiences. We could even dedicate a section of our internal newsletter to celebrate these contributions," he suggested, feeling a burgeoning current of excitement amongst a few faces in the room. But just as hope was burgeoning, Nathan caught Greg's grimace, a rebar of resistance tightening around him. "A workshop?" Greg scoffed, "That's non-productive fluff. We need hard results. Patting people on the back isn't going to save our bottom line." Beneath Greg's skepticism, Nathan felt a seed of resentment sprouting. Did Greg truly believe that nurturing a culture of engagement couldn't coincide with profitability? The tension in the air thickened as Nathan held his ground. "Engagement fosters loyalty, Greg. Happy employees lead to satisfied customers. Those are the hard results you thrive on." It was a battle of perspectives now, escalating into a conflict that transcended the boardroom's four walls and echoed through every corner of Nathan's mind. And as the discussions heated into disagreements, Nathan's thoughts churned. This was bigger than professional rivalry, it struck at the core of his identity. Was he so naive to think that an openly vulnerable culture could thrive in a rigid corporate setting? In A moment of clarity. Nathan understood they needed more than just conversations. They needed to confront the deep, entrenched beliefs within their corporate culture, including his own. He took a deep breath, ready to challenge the very framework that had limited his and others' aspirations. How do we define success? He asked into the tense silence, turning the entire room into a crucible of reflection. Must it always be quantified in profits, or can we transform what those numbers mean? Can we find worth in growth beyond financial? This was the true confrontation Nathan grappled with. Beyond statistics and margins, the opportunity to breathe life into a dying culture beckoned, but would he have the strength to lead that charge? As the conversation stirred with fresh energy, Nathan recognized he was standing at a crossroads, teetering between pragmatism and his idealistic dreams. And there, amidst the swirling energies of aspiration, doubt, and potential, he understood, the path ahead would not only define the company but unravel layers of his own beliefs. Now, the question remained. How far was he willing to push against the current of resistance, and what personal sacrifices would he have to uphold a vision that felt increasingly tenuous? The moment of resolution hovered just beyond his grasp, waiting to be realized. Would he have the courage to see it through, or would he falter in the face of doubt? And so he stood, poised for the fight of his life, uncertain of the outcome but resolute in one thing: the future demanded action, and he would need to summon every part of himself to face whatever lay on the other side of this burgeoning conflict. Nathan's heart pounded as silence settled over the room, each breath weighted with the gravity of his words. He had thrown himself into a challenge that could redefine their corporate ethos, yet he felt unmoored, vulnerable amid sharp criticisms. Dreams and aspirations swirled chaotically in his mind, struggling for clarity against the harsh reality of doubt. He scanned the room, searching for signs of connection. Helen's eyes sparked with tentative agreement, but Greg's contempt was like a caustic cloud hovering ominously. Is it only the numbers that matter? Can we not find a way to marry purpose with profit? His voice rang out fiercely, rallying a cause he was only just beginning to articulate. Numbers are what investors look for, Greg snapped, crossing his arms. You can't peddle hope to them. They want tangible results, Nathan. The dismissal hammered at Nathan's resolve, but he refused to let anger cloud his vision. Instead, he felt clarity creeping in, a revelation that demanded exploration rather than retreat. What if we framed this differently? He ventured, leaning into the tension. Instead of viewing our mission as a risk, could it be transformed into an opportunity for innovation? If we want to attract investors in the long term, we need a story that resonates. Our growth must be more than if we balance the books. The room's atmosphere thickened with contemplation. Nathan could see the minds working behind guarded faces. Let us redefine our metrics, he continued, a fire building in his belly. Instead of only focusing on quarterly profits, let us evaluate employee engagement, community impact, and brand loyalty. If our employees believe in our purpose, they'll share that belief outside these walls. He sensed a tentative shift in the room, a tiny spark igniting the air. Perhaps he was not alone in this. Helen looked thoughtful. If we incorporate metrics that reflect our mission, we could attract a different kind of investor, one who values social responsibility alongside profitability. For the first time, Nathan saw simmering agreement, not just in Helen's eyes, but in a few of his colleagues. He pressed forward, winning over hearts alongside minds, letting the momentum encourage him. And we can transform community workshops into brand ambassadors, bring in local stakeholders, clients, and employees to showcase the impact we can create together. But Greg's skepticism pulled at Nathan. You think a few workshops create loyalty? Show tangible results, or this will derail into another feel-good initiative, and you'll be the first to be blamed when the numbers drop again. The unyielding challenge in Greg's voice stung, forcing Nathan to confront the validity of Greg's concerns. Exhaling slowly, he turned inward, wrestling with his rapidly escalating frustration. It wasn't merely Greg's obstinance, it was a reflection of Nathan's profound fears. What if he was wrong? What if his vision for meaningful engagement fell flat? Would he be left to shoulder the consequences alone? As Greg's gaze bore into him, Nathan's resolve steeled. If we end up failing, it would be because we didn't dare to step out of our comfort zones. Sometimes the greatest ideas are born from the ashes of failures. This is about more than numbers, it's about cultivating purpose. Greg's face remained stony, but he could see the tide shifting among the others. Helen nodded, and a murmur of agreement rippled among the skeptics. Encouraged, Nathan pushed further. Let this initiative be a pilot program. If we fail, at least we'll have insights and be wiser for it. Isn't that a far better path than playing it safe? Nathan felt emboldened in that moment, parsing through his apprehensions. He realized that leadership was grounded not just in garnering approval but in challenging the status quo and forging fresh paths. This was his moment to invoke courage and conviction, to chart a course that aligned with his deeper values. And then, as if awakening from a slumber, he articulated the final piece: our success can be redefined. What if we could be leaders in creating a new benchmark that reflects both heart and profit? It's a risk, yes, but one worth taking. The words hung in the air, weighty with possibility. The paradox of risk and reward beat in sync with his pulse, but now it was clearer. He was fighting not just for an idea but to reclaim the very core of his professional self. But just as Nathan felt a surge of victory creeping in, a flicker of fear emerged within him, whispering of potential backlash and his readiness to handle it all. Suddenly, the exhilaration of the discussion was overshadowed by a looming uncertainty. In that moment, Nathan realized he stood on the brink of a defining decision. A question plagued his mind, daring him to confront the depths of his conviction. Would he risk everything for a vision? Who would stand beside him when the storm stirred again? As Nathan gathered himself to face his colleagues, the atmosphere crackled with anticipatory energy, and he felt the exhilarating burden of choice settle over him. This was only the beginning of a journey fraught with risks and revelations, and he wasn't sure he was ready for what lay ahead. He took a breath, poised for the next challenge, when his phone vibrated abruptly on the table, a new email notification lighting up the screen. He hesitated, dread creeping in. Did it herald support or another wrench in the works? As he picked it up, glancing at the sender, he braced himself for the unexpected twist that could change everything. When Nathan glanced at the screen, his heart sank. It was another email from his mentor, a reply brimming with warnings about the disastrous consequences of diverging from the company's traditional profit-centric model. The words echoed through him like a haunting refrain: beware the fallout. You risk everything. Yet, amidst the rising tide of uncertainty, something shifted within Nathan. The previously lurking doubts were overtaken by a profound realization. He had traversed a long and tumultuous path to this very moment. He was fully aware of the stakes involved, yet clarity reigned. This wasn't merely a business proposal, it was about the soul of the organization and his own vitality as a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan projected, the urgency in his voice thick with conviction, this isn't merely an initiative, it's a pivotal shift in how we define ourselves both as a company and as human beings. We're at a critical juncture where we must weigh our legacies against the footnotes of history. The room plummeted into silence, the intensity thickening like fog as his colleagues leaned in, their expressions a medley of curiosity and trepidation. Nathan could feel Greg's insistent scrutiny simmering in the background as he forged ahead, willing to turn the tides of doubt into a current of possibility. I stand here, adamant that we aren't just cogs in a profit machine, he continued, feeling emboldened. We are a company where every story matters, every life we impact, every worker whose labor carries meaning, and every letter Joe receives resonates beyond our quarterly reports. If we fail to embrace this narrative, we'll someday become irrelevant relics of a bygone era. A small murmur of agreement rippled through the boardroom, and Nathan seized the moment, bolstering his resolve. We have a chance to lead by example, bridging the gap between profitability and empathy. By tracing our impact on employees' lives, their sense of purpose and engagement, we could spark a renaissance for this company. Picture the innovation we could unleash simply by allowing employees to believe they are a vital part of something more significant than themselves. The tension began to thaw ever so slightly, but Greg remained visibly unimpressed. And if this experiment fails? Do you think investors will care about your lofty ideals when they are staring at the balance sheet? Nathan leaned forward, locking eyes with Greg unapologetically. But what you see as failure, I see as learning. If this journey reveals a clearer narrative of engagement despite setbacks, those very experiences will become invaluable assets to our company's evolution. A spark ignited in Helen's eyes, and she leaned in. Perhaps we could organize a workshop series where employees themselves determine what this new narrative looks like. A way of showing that their voices matter in shaping the mission. Nathan's heart soared as she spoke. Connections were beginning to bond around a shared vision. That's precisely it. By creating an internal community-focused hub, we could allow every employee to bring forth their stories. They will become the architects of our purpose-driven path, and together we can frame narratives that resonate deeply. The dynamics shifted further. Inspiration was taking root, contagious like wildfire among them. Nathan sensed the beginnings of transformation, but the real crescendo of change lingered on the precipice. The world is shifting, and so must we. We want to be the first, but we can be the best in embracing this dual narrative of profit and purpose. Let us harness what we can learn from Joe, from each letter, each act of kindness. Let us make a decision not driven by fear but motivated by our shared humanity. The boardroom stirred. Nathan felt the collective heartbeat quicken. It was no longer merely a board meeting, it became a congregation of ideas, dreams, and hopes filtering into the collective consciousness of the organization. Greg's demeanor started to reflect a glimmer of something trapped beneath years of skepticism. Fine, then. If you intend to pursue this path, let us put it to a vote. We'll test this initiative for 6 months. But if the numbers do not reflect our profitability targets, we will revert. Nathan absorbed the words, surrendering to the gravity of the moment. It was a fragile victory, but a victory nonetheless. I am committed to working alongside you all, but only if we wholeheartedly embrace this journey. If we are going to measure impact, it must not just be through fiscal lenses. Agreed. Helen extended her hand, offering a silent pact. One after another, several board members nodded their assent, resigning themselves to push through the discomfort and embrace the unknown. As Nathan felt the warmth of collaboration bloom, waves of pride swelled within him. Each colleague who shared their opinions, each trepidation transformed into a stepping stone to come together. It marked a moment not only of professional triumph but of personal triumph, too. Finally, as the meeting reached its conclusion, Nathan stood up, igniting a new chapter for the organization. Let us embark on this journey together. We've ignited a vision, but it begins with us. Let us create a legacy defined by purpose, a legacy where numbers are equal to stories, where our mission bridges the gap between profit and humanity. With each step he took as he exited the boardroom, Nathan recognized the profound transformation within. Wandering into the newly founded alliance of purpose-driven ambition, he felt solid confidence radiate through his core. He had conquered both the fear of vulnerability and the resolve to disrupt the status quo. And amid this overwhelming rush of emotion, he comprehended the ultimate truth: true success lay in their capacity to redefine values, forging a journey of inclusive growth that honored and uplifted all voices, including those as humble as Joe's. In this crucible of introspection, Nathan emerged renewed. He had conquered not just the individual struggles of corporate life but affirmed his own identity, uniting it with the commitment to profound change. Now, the unfurling of that vision lies ahead. He felt ready. The time was ripe to herald in a powerful evolution that would transform not only their organization but redefine how they engaged with the broader narrative of humanity. Don't let this moment slip away. You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding of more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for authentic transformations. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Nathan's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion and discover how to embrace their own paths of growth.